What we've been doing over the past couple weeks is a series called Voices, and we, in essence, have been able to bring in some really close friends of mine that are phenomenal, really speakers, but more than that, they've been key voices in my life. And the thought, this was like months ago, was, man, what if we could bring in some of these guys that have spoken into my life, and perhaps through that, they could really speak into the life of our church. And so we kicked off week one of Voices with, I don't know how we got this guy, John Peacock, but he was able to make time to be here. It was amazing. I know many of your lives were changed because of that sermon. And last week, Josh Reebok was with us. Wasn't that awesome? It was amazing having Josh with us. It was great. Next weekend, Jarrett Stevens is going to be with us, a good friend of mine. Jarrett and his wife Jeannie planted Soul City Church down in the city in the West Loop. And they're about a year older than we are, and they're really like a sister church. Like we meet with them, talk to them all the time, and steal most of their ideas, and they've really helped us. And so I asked Jarrett if he'd come next week and just talk to us a little bit. This weekend, we have a good friend of mine named Mike Breaux that's going to be speaking here in about 30 seconds. It's very exciting, right? And it's pretty cool. You know, Mike is one of those guys, like I know a number of you have people like this in your life where you can just be going about your day and you can almost just hear like something that Mike would say. Like I'll do something, I could almost just kind of hear Mike saying something. Or I'll be going through a hard time and I can just kind of, you know, like pull from kind of this database, like I remember a sermon that he gave on that. Mike has been a key voice in my life and in Kelly's life. He's spoken into our lives. He and his wife have spoken into our marriage. And he's a guy that from a distance, you'd be like, man, I love that guy, and I believe that he's a godly, but when you get closer, he actually becomes more godly. You're like, man, I want to be like that guy. I want to be like Mike, and actually did a Gatorade campaign off of that, which was pretty cool. But here's what we're going to do. Mission Church, you get one chance to do this, all right, because we only have one service for now. Let's give a huge, huge warm welcome to Mike Breaux.
Man, it is so awesome to be with you guys. I've been praying for this church for 2 years, before it ever was a church, meeting with John and Kelly and just praying about their dreams and stuff. And it's been really cool. I got to teach at a church last weekend called Mission Church out in Ventura, California, which launched about the exact same time that you guys launched. It's going to be about a year old in a couple of weeks or a few weeks, you know, just like you guys. And it was so cool to be in a movie theater last week. Teaching a church out there, and then to be in a high school. It's a middle school, right? Middle school here at Mission. They're called Mission Ventura. This is what? Mission Stratford. Man, it's just an honor to be with you guys. So cool to see what God is doing and all over the place. And this is just, I mean, I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. Finally. So good to see you guys. So stoked to see what God is doing in your lives. And I hear about it all the time. And keep track all the time with what's going on here. I'm just wondering, any of you guys like movie buffs? Anybody love movies? I love movies. Now, real quick, I just want you to turn to each other, people around you, just like 15 seconds, off the top of your head, your top 3 movies of all time. Top 3 of all time. All right. Now, just because you're in church, you didn't have to say like Fireproof or the 10 Commandments or whatever. Let me give you my top 5. I know you're not interested in that, but let me give you my top 5. Probably didn't make your list at all, none of these. And I got to tell you, I got to preface this by saying I had a hard time keeping Dumb and Dumber off this list. I really did. And also, I had a hard time keeping the trilogy. I do even have to say what the trilogy is. Toy Story 1, 2, and 3. That's like the best 3 movies I've ever seen. Let me give you my top 5 list. Again, they didn't make your all's list, I'm sure. But number 5 for me, and I wouldn't recommend it for kids especially because it's really violent and pretty brutal. But it's based on a true story of how Scotland won its freedom. Every time Braveheart comes on, I want to paint my face blue and go pick a fight with somebody. I mean, it just fires me up, man. You know, that scene with William Wallace walking in front of the troops and he says, all men die. Only a few ever really live. I want to go, oh yeah, give me a pitchfork. I'm just getting so fired up. Number 4 for me, I know it didn't make your list at all, but it was a television show when I was a kid that I used to watch, and they actually shot it in Chicago. They made it into a movie about this doctor who supposedly killed his wife, but he really didn't kill his wife. A one-armed guy killed his wife. It was a movie called The Fugitive with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. I love that movie. That's just an awesome movie. Got bus crashes and train wrecks, and guy does a swan dive off a dam. It's just an awesome, awesome movie. The third movie for me, number 3 for me, I know it didn't make your list. It's stupid. A really stupid movie. It's goofy, quirky, but it's this little movie called The Princess Bride. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie or not. You guys seen it? See it? It's got this little bald guy that I like that's always saying, inconceivable. And then you got Andre the Giant who talks in rhymes, and he's driving the little guy crazy. And one time the little guy goes, stop that rhyming, and I mean it. And Andre says, yeah, anybody want a peanut, which rhymes with peanut? Stupid, stupid movie. Number 2 for me, equally stupid. And I know this didn't make anybody's list, but for me, it's number 2 on my list because in our family, we grew up with kind of a history of mental illness, to be honest with you, and that explains a lot about me, and maybe a lot about your voices. I don't know. But anyway, there's a movie starring Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss called What About Bob? I just love this movie. It's so dumb. It's this neurotic guy who's the most normal guy in the movie, and he drives a psychiatrist crazy. And there's a great scene where he is in a mental hospital cracking the doctors up. They think he's the funniest guy ever. And he has this great line where he says, roses are red, violets are blue. I'm schizophrenic and so am I. I thought that's just a great line right there. But my number 1 movie, I walked out of this movie, and it's on all the time. Like you can flip channels every night. It's on somewhere. But I walked out of this movie, and I thought that is the most, again, I wouldn't endorse the whole thing, but so I'm walking out going, wow, that was the best photographed, best acted, best soundtrack, funny, clever, poignant, moving, touching, bizarre movie I think I've ever seen in my life. And I learned 3 really profound things when I walked out of this film. The first thing I learned was life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And I learned that stupid is, stupid does. And stupid has nothing to do with your IQ. Has everything to do with your promise-keeping ability, your decision-making ability. And the third thing I learned was so freeing for like a pastor communicator guy, because I used to work really, really hard on the conclusion to my talks. And now I just go, that's all I have to say about that. Just be done. Yes, freedom. It was awesome. But I was so taken by this character, this Forrest Gump character. This simple guy who tried to keep his promises the best he knew how. But there was a line at the end of this movie, there's a scene at the end of the movie where he's standing at the grave of his wife, Jenny, and who died at a young age because she made a lot of bad decisions. And he's talking to her, and he says, I don't know whether it was Mama or Lieutenant Dan who was right. Do we just kind of show up accidental-like and float around accidental-like a feather on a breeze? Or do we have a destiny? And when I heard him ask that question, I thought to myself, sitting right there in the movie theater, that's the question that everybody's got to wrestle with. I mean, do we just kind of show up accidental-like and float around accidental-like a feather on a breeze? Or do we have a destiny? And I look around our culture and I see so many people who have kind of chosen option number 1 that they really do believe that we just kind of show up accidental-like. In fact, I understand because we're taught at a very young age that we came from nothing and we're going to nothing. So basically everything in between would be kind of accidental-like, right? It's what sociologists have described our culture for the past 20 years with one word: whatever. Whatever. And I get that too, because if we just show up accidental-like and we float around accidental-like a feather on a breeze, there really is no purpose. If there's no purpose, there's really no truth. If there's no truth, there's really no right. There's really no wrong. If there's no right or wrong, there's really no destiny at all. It's kind of like whatever. And I was checking through some different surveys recently, just some latest stats about high school students, because I love high school students. My heart beats hard for students and college students. And I read this survey that said 80% of American high school students don't believe in such a thing as absolute truth. Whatever. Whatever's right for you is right for you. Whatever's wrong for you is wrong for you. Whatever's right for me is right for me. Just kind of whatever. I just read this the other day. 60% admitted that they cheat in school. Many of them plagiarizing articles from the internet and turning them in as their own report. Hey, whatever. 51% say they regularly drink alcohol underage. 60% of them said they have been involved in binge drinking over the past 30 days. 23% of those said they smoked marijuana in the last 30 days. 28% said they had stolen from a store. 23% had stolen from their parents or their friends, whatever. I remember a kid coming up to my daughter in high school and said, let me get this straight. Isn't it like true for like you Christians, like you can't have sex till you're like 18? She said, well, actually, that's when you get married. That's God's plan. Hey, whatever. I mean, sexual hookups, friends with benefits, whatever you want to call it. According to CNN article I read last week, 150,000 free condoms were shipped to the Olympic Village for, as one athlete called it, 3 weeks of sexual summer camp. 75% of the athletes in the Olympic Games were hooking up with whoever, whatever. And I get it, man. If we just show up accidental-like, and we float around accidental-like a feather on a breeze, it is all kind of a big whatever, isn't it? But I think you sense in your spirit, and as I sense in mine, I think everybody does down deep inside, that it's not all a big whatever. That there really is a purpose for being here. We were put on this planet for a reason. There is a destiny. And if you're feeling that deep within you, if you know, yeah, I know I'm here for a reason, well, you're right. I mean, Scripture puts it like this. Some scriptures you guys have seen, Jeremiah 29:11. Some of you have seen this verse 100 times. For some of you, this may be the first time you hear God speaking this to you. And listen to him speak it to you. For I know the plans I have for you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. That doesn't sound like a whatever kind of existence to me, does it you? Sounds like we got a creator who's got a plan in mind. Said, I got a destiny for you. I got some great plans for you to use your life. I love what it says in Ephesians 1:4 in the Message. It says, long before he ever laid down earth's foundations, he had us in mind, had settled on us as the focus of his love, to be made whole and holy by his love. Man, that doesn't sound like a whatever kind of existence to me, does it you? It sounds like we got this God who's he's thought about us long before he made anything else. I'm going to make them for a reason. I'm going to make them for a purpose. Philippians 1:6, the Apostle Paul writes these words. He says, I'm confident of this, that God, who began the good work where? Within you, will continue his work until it's finally finished on the day that Jesus Christ comes back. It sounds like we got a God who wants to move inside and do something inside of our life. And the cool part about that verse is, it says he won't quit doing it until Jesus Christ comes back. It says even after you die, he'll still be doing stuff through your life. It's till Jesus comes back. And the verse in Ephesians 2:10, I love this, it says, for we are God's what? Masterpiece. He created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. Man, that doesn't sound like a whatever kind of life to me. It sounds like we got a destiny maker. It sounds like we got someone who's got plans for our lives. When I was 17 years old, I was, man, you talk about a whatever kind of guy. I was one of those, and I grew up in church. I don't know how many of you grew up in church, but I grew up in church, but I didn't know God. I just kind of I was one of those guys that had one foot in the light, one foot in the darkness, and tried to be two different people. I don't know whether you've ever done that or not. I mean, living one life's hard enough. Trying to live two is almost impossible because you're lying to one group. I couldn't remember the lies I told the guys I was running with over here and couldn't remember what I told the good people I was running with over here, and try to be two different people. And it's just hard being phony. It just is. Being phony is exhausting. And I just started sensing, man, there's got to be more than this. And I met this girl. That's the way it happens. And how can I describe her to you? Hot, that'd work. She was so cute, man. I was so drawn to her. But the thing that really drew me to her was her authenticity. I mean, she had something that I'd never really seen in another person. She authentically loved God, authentically loved other people. She was just real. And I remember praying, God, that's what I want in my life. And if I could get her too, that'd be like awesome, like a package deal. That'd be great. So I started pursuing this girl for all I was worth, man. And these buddies of mine were going to this church youth group, and they invited me on this summer week a retreat. We're going to go up to northern Minnesota. I'm from Kentucky. We're going to take this long trip up to Minnesota, and I thought, that's about the lamest sounding thing I've ever getting a bus and travel for 15 hours with a bunch of people I don't really know very well. It's been a week. No, I don't think I want to do that. And they said, that Debbie girl's going. I said, sign me up. So, man, I went. That's the only reason I went, because that Debbie girl was going. And I pursued that girl for all I was worth that whole week. The thing I didn't realize is that God was pursuing me. And, man, he just wrecked my world that week. And I can remember, you know how you have those freeze-frame moments in your life where you can remember what it looked like, what it smelled like, who was there, you can remember the whole thing? That's the way this was for me, sitting on the banks of a lake in northern Minnesota by myself. Everybody had already gone back to the cabins. I was sitting out there around a kind of a smoldering campfire by this time. Stars in the sky. Could hear crickets and stuff. And I just put my hands up in the air. Never done that in my life. I mean, the church I grew up in, if you did that, they go, you have a question? So it wasn't like this religious thing that I did. I just threw my hands up in the air like instinctively as a broken 17-year-old guy. I said, God, I don't want to live like this anymore. I give up. I don't want to live with one foot in the light, one foot in the darkness. I want to walk with you. And God, wherever you want to take me in this life, I'm signing up tonight. And you might say that was the moment that I moved from kind of, whatever, to kind of wherever. And I never dreamed that God would take me to the places that he's taken me. I never dreamed that thousands of people would cross my path and touch my life, and that I might have a chance to touch other people's lives. The adventures I've gotten to go on, unbelievable. I mean, the guys at home, they still can't believe I'm doing this with my life. It's just a testimony that God changes people. But man, my life hadn't been easy, but man, it has been spectacularly fun. Just following Jesus, saying, okay, God, wherever you want to take me. And I meet so many guys who are missing out on that. You know what I'm talking about? I meet so many bored guys. I've talked about this before, how some people just do the same old thing every day. You know what I'm talking about? They get up at the same old time, look at the same old face in the same old mirror, draw off with the same old towel, put on the same old clothes, walk down the same old kitchen, get out the same old bowl, pour in the same old cereal, drink the same old coffee, kiss the same old wife, get in the same old car, go to the same old job, leave at the same old time, drive back in the same old traffic, pull in the same old driveway, go in and hug the same old kids, eat the same old dinner, sit in the same old recliner, watch the same old sports center, fall asleep in the same old chair, get up and go to the same old bed, ask the same old wife the same old question, get the same old answer, roll over, set the alarm clock, and get up and do the same old thing over again. And that's a lot of people's lives, man. I don't want to live same old, do you? Man, I want to do something that's just like full of faith and written. In fact, they asked a group of 95-year-olds. I don't know how they got them all together, but they did. And they asked them this question. If you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently? They responded in 4 ways. First response was, what was the question? And once they got it, here's what they said. If we had it to do all over again, we would risk more. We'd take more chances in life. We would see life like it's this big adventure in which you can't pick the fruit unless you're way out on a limb somewhere. We'd live with more faith. Second thing they said, we'd reflect more. We'd slow down. We'd savor moments. We'd soak in more sunsets. We'd spend more time with our kids. We'd develop deeper relationships with people. Third thing they said, if we had to do all over again, we'd do something with our life that would live on long after we're dead and gone. And I thought about that. Man, I'm not waiting until I'm 95 to say those things. I want to risk now. I want to reflect now. I want to do something right now with my life that's going to live on long after I'm dead and gone. In fact, this is the way I think that God has kind of called us to live our lives. And I know some of you get in a pool like this. You know what I'm talking about. You get in a pool, you stick a toe in. Some of you are toe dippers, aren't you? You stick a toe in, you go, ooh, that is cold. Then it's like your foot, whoo, that's cold. Ankles, whoo, calves, whoo, knees, whoo, thighs, whoo. Woo, all the way in this pool. He goes, ha, 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 ha. There's no way to get in a pool. I mean, how do you get in a pool? Yeah, you take a run and start, you tuck up your knees, you do a cannonball, and you hit the water, and the water goes flying. The ripples go out and hit the side, and they come back in. They go back out, and they come back in. They go back out, and if you're really big, they come back in. They go back out, and they come back in. If the sides of the pool weren't there, the ripples would just keep going and going and going and going and going and going and going long after you made your splash. I think that's what God calls us to do. He said, man, you got one life. You got a destiny. Jump in. Touch a life. Who will touch a life? 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 And long after you're dead and gone, we'll still be feeling the ripples. Now, I don't know whether I've made a lot of ripples with my life. Never dreamed I'd get to do this with my life. I never dreamed, I'm standing here looking at this school gymnasium. We planted a church in Vegas years back. I was the lead church planter for that. Never dreamed I'd be doing that with my life. I'm from Kentucky, so when I got a call to plant a church in Vegas, I'm thinking Vegas church is an oxymoron. What is that like? You know, you got like tithe machines in the lobby. You know, I got 3 Moses. You got like girls in bikinis announcing scripture and stuff. You know, it's like, what is a Vegas church going to be like? Well, I'll tell you what a Vegas church was like. It's so surreal for me to be here, to see all these chairs set up and just to know that God is going to touch so many lives in this community because you guys started this church. And I don't know whether I rippled on a lot of people in Vegas, but I do know I rippled on one guy named Jeff. We started our church meeting in the Las Vegas YMCA. And everything it took to do church came off the back of a truck, just like you guys show up at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's what we did. Chairs, lights, sound stage, cribs, everything to do church came off the back of a truck. In fact, we did it so long, we'd see like another U-Haul going down the road thinking, what denomination is that? It was like, we just thought everybody did church like that. It was just, that's the way we did it. And that's the way you guys are doing it. And I was playing basketball at the YMCA during the week, and this guy named Jeff pulls me aside and says, hey man, can I talk to you for a second? I said, sure. He goes, I want to preface this by telling you, I'm a really smart guy. I go, okay. He goes, I got a degree in physics. I was a small college All-American quarterback. I own my own business. I make a lot of money. But my life's kind of falling apart. I go, okay. He goes, I got a little drinking problem. I got a huge gambling problem. I can't stop. He goes, I'm just competitive enough that the other night, that's why I told you I'm a smart guy first, because the other night I ran out to my car. I was playing video poker in a casino. And I'm just competitive enough to think I could win. So I ran back out to my car. I'm searching through the seat cushions, looking for change, so I can go back in and keep playing. He goes, this is crazy. And he goes, I've been lying to my wife. I feel like I'm living two lives. He goes, I don't know whether you've ever done that or not. I go, oh yeah, I've done that. He goes, man, I feel like I'm just lying to everybody in my life. And then I come to your church that meets on the other side of this curtain. And I said, well, cool, man. He goes, I've been sitting in the back, and I'm just thinking maybe God's the answer. And I said, he is, man. So make a long story short, Jeff and I started meeting together, and Jeff did what I did. When I was 17, he was 30, 31. Just kind of said, okay, God, I'm ready. I just want to put my life in your hands. I want to go wherever you want me to go. And Jeff is one of the coolest, on-fire Christ followers I've ever seen in my life. So I'm sitting at home one night in Vegas, and I get a phone call from a lady in St. Louis. I don't know how she got my home number to this day. She called me up, and she says, do you have a church in Vegas? I said, yes, ma'am, I do. She goes, our son is 21 years old. He's a big old football player. He's got a drinking problem and a gambling problem, and we think he's heading to Vegas. Could you keep an eye out for him? So keep an eye out for him. 36 million people come to Vegas every year, you know. And if you don't know this by now, like 36 million is nothing for God. He knows where you're at. He pursues you relentlessly with his unfailing love. That's the way he is. I hung up the phone and said, we keep an eye out for him. She calls back in about an hour, said he's in Vegas. Hotel manager found him passed out in the parking lot and put him up for the night, got his license and called us, and here's where he's at, gave us the address to this little hotel back behind the strip. And so she said, could you guys do something? I went, yes, ma'am, we will. Hung up, thought, what are we going to do? So I call up Jeff. I go, hey, Jeff, I got a guy for you. Jeff goes, awesome, man. I go, here's where he's at. He's a 21-year-old guy, drinking problem, gambling problem, football player like you, man. Go get him. Jeff goes, I'm on it. Now, Jeff was on our setup crew at 6 o'clock in the morning. He goes down this little sleazy hotel behind the strip at 5:30 in the morning, bangs on this guy's door. Gary opens the door, and Gary's huge. He's like 6'4", 260. He's this huge guy. Fills up the door frame. He's hungover. He's got vomit on his shirt. And Jeff goes, hey, I know all about you, Gary. Your mom called. You got a drinking problem. You got a gambling problem. I used to have a drinking problem, gambling problem too, man. God changed my life. Come on, take a shower and go to church with me. And Gary goes, excuse me? He goes, sorry I'm here so early, man, but I'm on this setup team, and we everything it takes to do church comes off the back of a truck, and we're going to set up in about an hour or so. And, man, you're huge. You could help. And Gary goes, okay. He takes a shower, gets in the car with a complete stranger in Vegas, drives out to the high school that we're meeting in now, stands in the back of a Ryder truck, handing out stacks of chairs to guys he's never met in his life, sits in one of those chairs, and that day gives his life to Jesus Christ the way Jeff did when he was 35. It was so cool to watch. And I watched Gary ripple on a guy named Darnell, who rippled on a guy named Chris, who began leading all the recovery ministries. That's the way it works. Just a life touches a life. Who touches a life? Who touches a life? Who touches a life? When I think about ripples in Vegas, I think about Rachel. Rachel came up to me at the YMCA, and we were meeting there, and she was a very attractive girl, but she had mascara running everywhere. That ever happened to you in church? God just was moving in her heart, and she came down front, and she goes, hey, I don't know what to do. So I was going to have an abortion. I'm a single mom, and everybody talked me out of it. And I got this kid now, and this kid doesn't like me. He cries all the time. I don't know what to do with him. And I said, I'm not really good with babies either, but my wife Debbie could help. I got that Debbie girl, by the way. I said, let me hook you up with with Debbie, and she could talk to you. So I hooked her up with Debbie, and Debbie just poured her life into Rachel, and just helped her become a mom. And she came over for dinner that day, and then started coming over every Sunday, then every Sunday, every Tuesday night, every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, then Saturdays. Then pretty soon she moved in with us with her kids, and it was just a great relationship. But Rachel, what she did in Vegas, she worked at Caesar's Palace, and like I said, she was a very physically attractive girl, so that's how she kind of made her money. Her official title was wine goddess, and dressed in a very seductive outfit and stuff. That's what she did. And Debbie just kept helping her follow Jesus. She kept coming to church, and it was just neat to see the change in her life. And she says, hey, my little boy is going to be a year old, and just wondering if, I'm so grateful that God gave him to me. I can't imagine not having him in my life. My apartment's a little too small. You mind if we use your house for a birthday party, a 1-year-old party for our son? I said, oh, it'd be great. She goes, could I invite a bunch of friends? Invite whoever you want to. It'd be awesome. She goes, would you take pictures? I go, sure. Just show me how to work your camera. I'll be glad to do it. So the party's supposed to be at 7 o'clock. Doorbell rings, and in walk all these other wine goddesses from Caesar's Palace. I'm just clicking pictures, man, going, I cannot believe I'm doing this with my life. I'm thinking, God, when I was 17 and I said wherever, I wasn't thinking a living room full of wine goddesses in Vegas. I had no clue that I'd be here. But what was cool is that Rachel eventually gave her life to Christ, and so did Lori, one of the girls that was there that night. And I would just stand up on a stage there at the high school that we were meeting in, and much like this, looks a lot like this. I would just look out at this little section right over here, and there's Rachel and Lori and 2 friends from Caesar's. And then pretty soon there's like 8 from Caesar's. Pretty soon 20 from Caesar's Palace. Just one life, touching a life. Who was touching a life? Who was touching a life? When I think of ripples, I think of Harold. Harold is the biggest redneck I've ever met in my life. He wouldn't mind me telling you that because it's the way he says he is. He is. He just is. He's from Kentucky. I'm from Kentucky. There's a lot of rednecks in Kentucky. I know it's a surprise to you, but there is. And he is like one of the biggest ones I've ever met in my life. I mean, when I met Harold, he said, Mike, you ain't never met nobody as far away from God as I've been, man. I know you've been out there in Sin City and all that kind of stuff, but you ain't never met nobody as far away from God as I've been. And he was right, man. He told me all the stuff he was into. Whoa, it was dark. Harold is such a cool guy, man. Harold now is an associate pastor at a church in Hazel Green, Kentucky. But Harold stood up, and the first time he shared his story, he stood up in front of a bunch of guys, and he goes, my name's Harold. So I used to be this old, nasty, smelly trash can of a man. And now I'm a bright, clean, shiny trash can of a man. He's just an awesome guy. Well, I invited Harold and a small group to come up on stage one weekend at our church, and they sat on stools. And Harold kind of told his story. And I said, man, Harold, that's so awesome the way God has changed your life. I go, how did it start for you? He goes, Stephen down there. I go, really? He goes, yeah, Steve and I used to be fishing buddies. He told me, Harold, you are screwed up, man. You need some help. You need to go to my church. So I started coming to his church. Jesus Christ changed my life. I said, that's awesome, Harold. I said, Luke, what about you? He goes, Harold. I said, really? He goes, yeah, we used to do lines of cocaine together. Now we're doing lines of scripture together. Ain't that cool? I said, that is cool, Luke. I said, Robbie, what about you? He goes, Luke. I mean, just all the way down the line. It was just one guy who touched another guy's life, who touched another guy's life, who touched another guy's life. When I think about the ripples, I think about Nanny. She was our 103-year-old grandma, coolest old lady I've ever met in my life. She's the first person I heard say, when you get to be 100, don't buy green bananas. That's just good advice right there. Get them ripe, man. You don't know. You just don't know. Get them ripe. She was awesome. I mean, she was just flat out awesome. Well, when she turned 100, we threw a big party for her, a big 100th birthday party, send her name into the Today Show and all that kind of stuff, picture on the Smucker's jam jar, all that kind of stuff. But Nanny, she never went to college. She never had any money. She never had a driver's license, ever. She was a widow of 50 of her 103 years. She was just an amazing woman. I watched just hundreds of people came into that little house on that birthday party to wish her a happy birthday and thank her. I thought, wow, this is crazy. I mean, they don't even know this person. Well, here's what she did. She just decided early on in her life she was not going to float around accidental like a feather on a breeze. She goes, I'm going to put my life in the hands of the destiny maker, and I'm going to make a difference with my life. And she poured her life and her love into her 6 girls. You know what those 6 girls did? They just poured their life and their love and their faith into their 3 or 4 kids. You know what their 3 or 4 kids have done? They poured their life and their love and their faith into their 3 or 4 kids. And I stood there in that home watching hundreds of people walk through this little bitty house on Elam Park in Lexington, Kentucky, saying thank you to this little wrinkled woman in the corner that they'd never met. That's just the way the ripples work. And I stood there with extreme gratitude because one of those 6 girls that Nanny had was a girl named Molly, who had this really cute daughter named Debbie, who changed my life. Debbie and I have a daughter named Jody, and I wish you could meet Jody. Her and her husband are the ones that are planting the mission church out in Ventura, California. Jody's just an awesome girl. But when she was a junior in high school, kind of went down some pretty dark, destructive roads. You know, and I want to say something to you parents, even though you do the best job of parenting you can humanly do, and I'm not saying that we did, but we were pretty good parents. Your kids still have a free will. They can make choices on their own. They're fallible human beings just like us. And she started making some pretty bad choices. And I just started praying for Jody. Debbie and I talked about this the other day, how we would pray for Jody. We prayed in different ways. But I prayed specifically that God would give her discernment. But she knew right from wrong. And when she was standing at a crossroads, she'd make the right decision. Said, God, she's your kid. We can't be with her 24/7, but you can. So your Holy Spirit, you just remind her when she's standing at that crossroad, take the right road. Prayed that all the time. Second thing I personally prayed, God, help her to be a lousy liar. And she was a lousy liar, man. She couldn't cover her tracks worth anything. We were always finding out about stuff. Finally just came unraveled like a cheap sweater. And she goes, I don't want to do this anymore. And she did what I did when I was 17. She put her hands up and said, God, I give up. I just want to be one person living for you, and wherever you want to take me, I'm ready. And Jody's just so cool. When she graduated from high school, she said, I don't want to go to college right away. I want to go to Haiti. We've been there on some short-term mission trips, and she said, I just fell in love with those kids. I want to go back and I want to help in that orphanage and that medical clinic, and I want to spend the next year of my life just doing that and growing close to God. I said, really? You really want to do that? Jody, it's 3,000 miles away from home. I mean, it's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It's drug-infested. It's got lots of AIDS, and it's a tough place. I mean, and it's also oppressed by voodooism. I mean, we go out in the hill country, and you just hear voodoo drums beating all through the hills all night long when you're trying to sleep on top of a roof. It was just spooky. I said, you want to go there? And she goes, I want to go there next year of my life. And one of the hardest things I've ever done is put my little girl on a plane, go, God, she's your kid. Use her. And God used that girl. Oh, my goodness. We got an email one night from Jody. She says, Mom and Dad, tonight's been one of the coolest nights of my life. Because I was called out in the middle of the night to deliver a baby, and I never delivered a baby in my life, but I was with the nurse the other day when she delivered a baby, so they thought I was a nurse, and since she wasn't there, they came and got me. She goes, I get to this hut, and there's this naked, screaming pregnant woman on the dirt floor of this hut getting ready to give birth to this kid. And I'm thinking, I'm 3,000 miles away from home. I'm in a hut with a naked, screaming pregnant woman on the dirt floor of this hut, and I've got a flashlight and no clue how to do this. So she said, I'm just praying, God, help me remember what I saw Magdala, the nurse, do yesterday. And she goes, I was just trying to gather the courage to deliver this baby. And she goes, to make matters worse, a woman walked into the hut, kind of a visitor, and she was dressed in a red and blue kind of a wrap, kind of denoting that she was, for lack of a better word, a voodoo priestess. And Jody said it was the most evil presence she's ever felt in her life. She goes, the woman started walking around us chanting something in Creole, stopped at the woman's belly and put some kind of ointment there and started chanting something. Then walked back around and was chanting something, stopped at the woman's head and put some ointment on the woman's head and started chanting something, and the woman was freaking out. And Jody said, I was freaking out thinking, what in the world is going on here? She stopped at the woman's head and just started staring at me as I was getting ready to deliver this baby. She goes, I didn't know what to think, so I'm thinking, I'm 18 years old, I'm 3,000 miles away from home, I'm in a hut all by myself with a naked, screaming pregnant woman, and some voodoo woman is staring a hole through me. She goes, I didn't know what to do. So I just looked right back at her. She goes, I knew she didn't understand English, so I just started singing. Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above. Wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome God. She goes, she just kind of came unglued and ran out of the hut, and I delivered the baby. And I knew that baby was going to be born with the blessing of God. You're clapping now. I was reading that email as her dad. As her dad, thinking, what are you doing in a hut with a voodoo woman? You get on a plane. We got puppies. We got ice cream. We got fluffy pillows. You need to come home, girl, you know. But in the next breath, you're going to ask Debbie, I said it out loud, wait a ripple, girl. Because who knows? Who knows that little baby that she delivered that night, whose life they're going to grow up and touch, and whose life they're going to grow up and touch, whose life they're going to grow up and touch, and whose life they're going to grow up and touch, because one courageous 17-year-old kid said, I'm sick and tired of floating around accidental like a feather on a breeze. I want to put my life in the hands of the destiny maker, and I want to make some ripples with my life. Jesus said in Mark 8:35, only those who are willing to throw away their lives for my sake will ever know what it means to really, really live. Don't you want to really, really live? You got a choice. You can float around accidental like a feather on a breeze if you want to. Or you can put your life in the hands of the destiny maker, and you can make some ripples with your life. And that's all I have to say about that. Let's pray together. Father, I thank you so much for what you're doing in this place. The fact there are hundreds of people in this room, it's just graphic illustration of what we're talking about. Just a life touched a life, and a life touched a life, and on and on and on it went. And all these people are here now. And God, I can't help but think what you're going to do with all these people. Wow. All the ripples that are going to be felt all the way through this area of Chicago. God, I just pray you would use our lives to ripple on all kinds of people. And God, whether we're struggling like Gary and Rachel and Jeff and Harold, or whether we're just a faithful, simple man or woman like Nanny, just saying, I want to be a great dad. I just want to be a great mom. I just want to, God, wherever you got us in this season of life, just use our life to touch a life. To touch a life, to touch a life. So, Father, I know this all begins with surrender. And I pray that today, God, as we sang a little bit earlier, that we said, we're going to follow you. And I pray that would be something that would resonate deep within us, God, where we say, God, I give up. I just want to follow you wherever you want to take me. So, God, we give you our hearts today and pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen, God.